Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about your three new best friends: moderators, mediators, and confounders. These three things are talking about how many variables work together. So think about them as different types of relationships. You know, on your Facebook status, you can pick a relationship. Moderators, mediators, and confounders are relationship statuses between variables. It might sound technical, it might sound complicated, but really they're just fancy names for things that you already understand. You might not be used to thinking about them in terms of these names and this type of data analysis, but as soon as you see the examples, you'll understand no problem, and you'll know the names for the different relationship statuses. And understanding these different types is essential for doing really good, solid data journalism. The example we're going to take is the relationship between sunscreen and cancer. A little while ago, some reports came out in the news media that there was a relationship between the use of sunscreen and cancer. Of course, this got a lot of attention because it's around a topic that people are very worried about. People feel afraid. It's a very emotional topic. And if the thing they're using to protect themselves from a disease is actually causing the disease, that's a big deal. So can we use data to tell what's going on in the relationship between sunscreen and cancer? We only have observational data. We don't have a scientific experiment on this topic. In order to have a scientific experiment, we'd have to select some people to use sunscreen and some people not to use sunscreen, and then follow them for 10, 15, 20 years and see who has cancer. Clearly, this is not ethical. We're not going to be able to do this. We don't have a scientific experiment about the effects of sunscreen and cancer on humans. Let's say our observational data shows a definite relationship between sunscreen and cancer. It is possible, therefore, that sunscreen use is causing cancer. Our data does show that there is a relationship between sunscreen and cancer. However, there are many different explanations for why this relationship might exist. It is possible that the people who have risk factors for cancer are more likely to use sunscreen, and that this is what's creating the relationship between sunscreen and cancer. This is called a confounding variable. So the relationship status here is confounding variable. That means that the relationship between sunscreen and cancer is not in fact a direct relationship, but it's a relationship that's being caused by a third factor that we can't see from our data, which is the propensity to have cancer. That's only one possible explanation. That's only one possible relationship status among many. Another relationship status would be a mediating variable. That would mean that it is possible that there is a harmful chemical in some sunscreens, and that it's this chemical, not the sunscreen itself, that's causing cancer. So the sunscreen has a harmful chemical, and the harmful chemical is causing cancer. So that would mean that sunscreen itself is not causing cancer, but this chemical is causing cancer. And then the sunscreens that do not have this chemical would not have this relationship directly with cancer. This relationship status is called a mediating variable. Finally, it is possible that sunscreen acts differently for different types of people. For example, people with different types of pigment in their skin probably respond differently to how sunscreen affects the rates of getting cancer. This is called a moderating factor. This moderating factor changes the relationship status. It changes the way that the sunscreen is related to cancer. The relationship is different for different people. So these are just three of the many possible relationship statuses that you need to think about before you say, yes, we definitely have a causal or important relationship between two variables. These things really matter. When you're working with data, it's essential that you take the time and sit down and really think through what are all the possible relationship statuses that your two variables or three variables or four variables can have. What are all the possible relationship statuses that they can put in this story? What other things can be causing this relationship? What's the mechanism that might be causing the behind the scenes relationship? And is the relationship different in different situations? Asking these questions is essential every single time you sit down to tell a story with data. Is the relationship status here a moderator, a mediator? And what are the confounding factors? Can you control for the different confounding factors? Can you talk about the different confounding factors? Once you've done this, these are your 3 new best friends. They really help you tell the story, and we're all set.